a lot of people are like, oh, I'd love to, you know, do more activism work, but I don't know how to join Trans Liberation Front. I don't know how to join, you know, whatever big group. And like a big thing that I really advocate for is affinity groups or mutual aid networks. Like I know a load of like trans people that can't afford to eat at the minute. Cool, do something yourselves. And like that principle of like, if I can help one person's life is massive. My life has felt massive. And you know, that change is a really big thing. People always think that they've got nothing to offer, but everyone's got something to offer to the fight. Like a lot of, I think my stage persona is very much someone of like this kind of angry person who is just like, oh yeah, we're not going to take it anymore. Because, you know, part of being a trans femme or a trans misogyny affected person is the community, and it's the kind of like, yeah, it's looking out for each other. The festival's called Black Cat Fest. It's on 3rd of July, and we've got some like really big artists as like Princess Shishi and Reptile B and Piglet and Kapil Seshasahi. But it's in collaboration with a group called Death Before Detransition, who do a lot of kind of like all trans lineups. It typically is a lot of like queercore and a lot of hardcore, but they're mixing their bills up a lot more as well.
Hi, I'm Renee, and I'm a gender-affirming voice teacher. And welcome to Speaking Freely, an interview series about trans voice, trans advocacy, and trans liberation. Today, I am very excited to introduce you to Floralis, a trans-feminist, anti-imperialist musician and community organizer based in Brighton, UK.
By your own admission, you've never enjoyed it there.
I've never been to Brighton.
Floralis makes electronic music with roots in punk, emo, and metal, blending samples from Trinidadian and South Asian musical traditions into something that sounds completely her own. Her debut album, My Name is Floralis, toured with every date as a fundraiser for local anarchist direct action groups. And her sophomore album, Saboteur Club Anthems Volume 1, is an album that will make you want to dance and organize at the same time.
Both! Multitask!
In this conversation, we talk about Floralis' music and what it means to make political art as a trans woman of color, the hotel industrial complex and how tourism can function as a tool of colonial control, how she organizes through mutual aid, affinity groups, and her UK directory of performers of color, and her relationship with her own voice, including a really important conversation about the pressure trans women face from all directions when it comes to voice training.
Is that a lot?
That's a lot. We also talk about her upcoming festival, Black Cat Fest, an anti-fascist, anti-imperialist trans liberation festival happening July 3rd, 2026 in Brighton. And if you're watching this when it comes out, that is tomorrow. So I've linked the details in the description. Whether you're a trans person thinking about the role your voice plays in the world, someone who wants to feel less alone in caring about these issues, or you're just ready to discover your next favorite artist, I think you'll find a lot to love in this conversation. Check it out. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Hello, thank you so much for having me, Renee.
So I met you when you reached out to me, and you sent me like an unsolicited email, and I'm so glad you did because I've been following you on Instagram ever since and loving what you're doing. But I was wondering if you could introduce yourself to the people in my audience who might not be aware of you and your music.
Two and two is getting put together now, because I was like, oh, how did this person find me? And then I'm remembering when I emailed you, wow, okay, I only realized that this second. Yeah, so my name's Floralis. I'm a trans-feminist, anti-imperialist musician. I make electronic music. I actually originally kind of like had my footing in like post-hardcore. So a lot of my music has like roots in like punk and in emo and actually in metal. Like originally I kind of was playing metal when I was a lot younger, but then I switched to electronic music. A lot of my influences are from like Björk. Björk is a really big one for me, and then also Danny Brown and Outkast. But that's kind of slowly changing over time. And yeah, I just released an album in September called Saboteur Club Anthems Volume 1, which is a specifically very political club album. The idea was to kind of get people to like dance and party while also thinking about anti-imperialism and transfeminism and yeah, specific issues that are affecting trans people and POC in the UK today, and also, you know, people in Palestine, people in Sudan, etc.
And congratulations, because that album does exactly what it says on the tin. I'm obsessed. I bought it. I've been listening to it a lot. I tried to think before we got on the call, like what my favorite track is, and I couldn't pick one. But I do think if I had to pick, I might Tell Your Mates, because it's such a banger.
It's the one that like kind of got me, like it definitely got me a bigger audience. It's funny, like before I ended up like boycotting Spotify and taking my music off of Spotify, I that song was the kind of thing that really kind of blew me up, because it got onto a load of like German anti-fascist playlists and stuff, and
Wow.
it just kind of, it got really big in Germany, and now it's still to this day, I guess, like my biggest song. And it's just like, I basically made it because I thought it was kind of funny, and it was just like, you know, it's a song specifically about like the kind of like Nazi town that well, you know, not a Nazi town, but it's like a racist town that I grew up in, where there are a fair amount of Nazis and stuff. Yeah.
We have so much to talk about because, like you just mentioned, you took your music off Spotify, and your activism is incredible. I don't even know where to start, to be honest. Maybe you could talk a little bit about Spotify and why you are not supporting them anymore. Also, I took like 4 albums off Spotify as well.
Oh wow.
A while ago.
Yeah, it's funny. Like, the reason I did it, I'm an anti-imperialist at my core, and when Spotify's been bad for artists for a really long time, but I think for a lot of musicians, we were just kind of like, yeah, we lost the fight against streaming, and it sucks, but whatever. Like, it's how people discover our music. So I was kind of like, okay, whatever, for a while. And it was basically when Daniel Ek, the CEO, became the chairman for a company called Helsing, an AI military tech company called Helsing, and then invested at that time $700 million into the company. And then I was like, okay, so Spotify is now just a channel for AI military tech. I can't support this anymore. And while I've got a small audience, in some ways it was a way of kind of you know, sticking to my principles, but in some ways it was also me telling myself, okay, you're getting more popularity right now. Are you going to lose your principles, or are you going to stick to them? And for it, in many ways, it was a way for me to kind of say, like, look, Floralis, like, you have to stay to your principles. The principles are the only thing that really matter. And if you are choosing to sell out your principles, then, like, I mean, like, what's the point in your music? It was difficult as well, because, as I mentioned, I Might Tell Your Mates got really popular on Spotify, and specifically in Germany at that time. And I was literally just about to go on my Europe tour. And so I was about to do this big tour where I was playing a load of shows in Germany. But I don't know. It was all I could think about. And the guilt was kind of like eating me up a little bit of like having my music on it, and I just couldn't stick with it anymore. And I had to. And then we launched the band's Boycott Spotify campaign, but then Instagram took us down. I think we got reported loads by, like, I don't know, Zionists or something. But, like, yeah,
It's horrible.
Yeah, it was bad.
Yeah, I mean, your principles, like, this is going to sound ridiculous, but they're part of your brand also. Like, who are you? Who is Floralis without anti-imperialism and without these principles, right?
Exactly. Yeah. It's funny. Like, the biggest influences for me, in by way of like, how do I want to be remembered, are artists like Godspeed You Black Emperor and Chumbawamba, who are, you know, anarchist musicians like myself, who have always stuck to their principles. And, like, musically, I'm quite different to them, but you know, they're some of my favorite artists ever. Like, I have quite a broad range of the stuff I listen to, I guess. But, like, I really admire them as people, and the way that they've, like, always, some of the stories that, like, Chumbawamba have are absolutely wild. Like,
wow,
some
I
of the things
had
that
no idea.
Oh yeah. They were like squatters and stuff in the 80s and 90s. They, like, at one point, Toyota asked to buy one of their songs for an advert and use it for an advert. So they took the money and then just gave it to Corp Watch, so that Corp Watch could investigate human rights abuses that the automobile industry was doing. So they like, and the reason that, like, you know, they had Tub Thumping, which made them really big, but then they kind of, like, they were hated by the music press because they were really openly anarchists, and they ended up destroying their careers because at the Brit Awards they saw the current, you know, the UK Prime Minister at the time, and they went over to him and just, like, grabbed this bucket of ice that was on his table and shoved it on his head. And after that, they were never famous again.
And history remembers them as a one-hit wonder. How sad.
Yeah. The anarchists remember them as, like, you know, the legends, but yeah.
Incredible. So in the description of this album, I'm just looking at your Bandcamp right now.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, I'm going to link all of your links below. But if people are watching this and are not familiar with Bandcamp, like, be on Bandcamp. It's the place to be. There's lots of amazing artists on Bandcamp. It's the only place you can get my records now. And they have their Bandcamp Friday thing. I'll leave some information about Bandcamp below, but check out Floralis on Bandcamp. But in the description of Saboteur Club Anthems Volume 1, you say, "This is my attempt to connect with my heritage, to encourage people to think about the violence of the hotel industry, to highlight the violence committed against transmisogyny affected people, and above everything, to inspire mobilization." I want to talk about all of those things. It's like a great list.
Sure.
So you say, this is my attempt to connect with my heritage. So can you talk a little bit about your heritage and how that came into this music?
So I am, my family are mixed, like Scottish and Trinidadian. Indo-Trinidadian specifically. A lot of people don't know lots about Trinidad, but it's the most southern island in the Caribbean. 40% of the population are of Indian descent, 40% of the population are of like West African descent, obviously because of slavery. We were indentured laborers that were taken over there. For me, you know, I was making electronic music, I was making punk music before that, and a lot of it didn't really have those kind of like very specific clear links to my heritage. So I started kind of like utilizing samples from, you know, just field recordings and stuff from Trinidadian music and also from Indian music by way to make something that sounded like very kind of like authentic to me, because, you know, I grew up as like an emo and a metalhead and stuff, and also, you know, liking electronic music. It's, you know, I've kind of got that side of it, but then blending in something that sounded very distinctly Desi, and you can hear that in songs like I Met Tell Your Mates or Hotel Industrial Complex as well. The specific issues that I talk about in the album relate a lot to the kind of plight of colonized people generally around the globe. So like Hotel Industrial Complex is, I guess, like, you know, this is kind of what we were talking about just then. A lot of people kind of say that in the Caribbean, the hotel industry replaced the sugarcane plantations. Essentially, you know, maybe in some cases literally, but kind of essentially as an occupying force for the global north. One of the main ways in which like the West manages to keep kind of a presence in the Caribbean is through the hotel industry. The beaches, which a lot of people grow up on, are kind of more and more becoming privatized, and local people can't access them. And what you end up creating with the hotel industry because of this is essentially a series of apartheid states, a series of places where, you know, maybe not like legally apartheid states, but, you know, there's Westerners that are there that are, I say Westerners, I mean, Trinidad is the West, but like, you know, I guess like the global north, white
Sure.
people who are
Yeah,
there.
let's just call it what it is.
Yeah, typically white people, not exclusively, but typically white people who are there. Seawater is kept clean for them. The running water is clean for them, and it isn't for a lot of local people. And the people that are there kind of are always told and really believe, don't talk to the locals, don't go in these areas because they're dangerous. There are droughts that happen throughout the Caribbean because water is used more for swimming pools and not for like local people. People are going to their own particular like Western hospitals instead of attending the ones that are used by like local Trinidadian people or local Caribbean people. The song that I wrote, The Hotel Industrial Complex, is specifically about the ways in which the hotel industry is the method in which the global north retains state control over the global south through the uses of hotels. And while I guess the kind of like center of it is specifically about the Caribbean, it ends with a conversation actually from someone who I think was working within the tourism industry for Israel, and was talking about how now that there's more people within the state of occupied Palestine, there's a lot of holidays that are being taken from like Israelis to other areas, but they're thankful that there aren't people from like the Middle East that are coming over to Israel. So specifically that they're kind of saying like, it's good, we're having Westerners come over here a lot and our people are going over to other countries, but thankfully we're not getting Moroccans coming over to Israel. And I thought it was a really interesting quote because it's a very specific look about like, the purpose of this is settler colonialism. The purpose of this is the retention of state control and the retention of Western control across the global south, and particularly in places where they want to kind of exploit industries. Part of the reason that the Caribbean has been like kept under the control of the hotel industrial complex for such a long time is that like countries like Trinidad, for instance, are very oil rich, but also it's a really easy access to Latin America as well. Like Trinidad is right over the coast from Venezuela. So it's a really useful place to have Westerners coming over to and stuff. Yeah, there's a lot there. So I mean, the hotel industry it's you know, it's not only really negative for the local people that live in those areas because of the kind of creation of an apartheid essentially, but it's also you know, it's a method of kind of creating territories for Western countries.
Yeah, I mean, it's all arms of colonialism, like reaching back through history and continuing through today. And I feel like there are so many facets of this conversation. Like this is one facet. And then I think a lot about the riots happening in Mexico City because of all the Americans who are working remotely from Mexico City and like exploiting Mexico while earning in US dollars and not supporting the economy there. And it's not just happening in Mexico, it's happening in lots of Latin American countries. And like, it's frustrating when people don't see it as just the continuation of colonization, you know?
I think Mexico is a really interesting country to bring up in this situation because, like, I read a book a while ago called A Brief History of Neoliberalism by David Harvey. I read this maybe 6 years ago, actually, and it's a brilliant book. The specific look in which the IMF and the Reagan administration forced Mexico into loads of debt and destroyed loads of their social housing and loads of their social facilities in order to privatize loads of land in Mexico, which then was sold to like the hotel industry and then sold to other kind of like, you know, actual kind of like production industries as well, is part of the reason that Mexico has become this kind of like heavily exploited, not that it wasn't already being exploited by Spain, but like, you know, like in the kind of modern stage, it's part of the reason that like Mexico has become a place which is just kind of like a tourist ground for so many different people as well. And it also led to a lot of uprisings, a lot of really amazing uprisings actually, but kind of out of desperation for local indigenous people.
Yeah, I mean, it's at the end of the day, it's all just like resource extraction at the expense of the local community, right?
Totally, absolutely.
So we could talk about this all day, I'm certain, but there's two more points on the list that I want to get to from your description of your album. You wanted this album to highlight the violence committed against transmisogyny affected people. Such a big topic to unpack, obviously, but I wonder if you could speak on the types of violence that you're speaking about in this record.
Yeah, I'm going to try and do like a TLDR of it.
Sure.
I don't know if you've ever heard of the Trans Murder Monitoring Report, but in 2023 it revealed that 97% of all trans murders were committed against trans women, with the majority of the people in this situation being trans women of colour, and the majority of those trans women of colour being black trans women, and also the majority of these people being sex workers. A lot of what I talk about in my album, particularly on the song You're Not Dead, but also in Black Combat Boots and a few other songs as well, and Die Alone too, is specifically the ways in which like a lot of trans women specifically, because of the fact that we are statistically the least employable people within the trans community, a lot of us go into the underground sex economy. You know, if it's a choice to go into sex work because that's something that you want to do, that's great, and that's something that people want to do. But the thing is that like a lot of us don't have a choice. A lot of trans women don't have the choice. They end up having to be sex workers, whether they like it or not. And in the UK, there's very few legal protections for sex workers. Like if someone was doing, you know, if there were two sex workers working within the same building, that would violate brothel laws, and then people could get arrested for that. So then they have to operate by themselves, in complete isolation,
which is way more dangerous.
And then you couple that with the fact that like many trans women are going into sex work, and also we are statistically the most likely to be murdered. It's a death sentence for a lot of us. So this album specifically is talking about like the violence committed against transmisogyny affected people, but is also kind of telling them a lot of the time that like I don't know, I kind of, a lot of what I try to do in my shows is kind of let them feel seen and kind of make them feel strong. Like a lot of, I think my stage persona is very much someone of like this kind of angry person who is just like, oh yeah, we're not going to take it anymore, and is also trying to let people know that they are seen and that we're in this together, because, you know, part of being a trans femme or a trans misogyny affected person is the community, and it's the kind of like, yeah, it's looking out for each other.
I love that, and I'm really grateful for the work that you do, because as you say, it's so easy to feel like alone in this fight too. And that brings me to like this fourth point on your list here, which is to inspire mobilization. I think a lot about like everybody's role in this fight and how we all sort of have different roles to play. I struggle with this as a brand as well as a person, because I try very hard to maintain like a very positive space, because I want people to, like trans people, to come into my world for a break from the difficult stuff, right? Where they get to relax and practice their voice, and we just accept you for who you are without any question. But so I don't get a lot of chance to talk about the things that we're talking about, which are also very important to my heart. And I'm grateful that I have my role, and your role is to like speak on these issues. And so can we talk a little bit about like how people can find their role in the fight, and maybe how did you find yours?
Yeah, God, that's an interesting question. I have very particular kind of like theory brain ideas of like what I like in terms of anarchism and activism stuff. But one of my big kind of beliefs is the idea that you don't have to join a major organization to do something. You don't have to, a lot of people are like, oh, I'd love to, fight for, like do more activism work, but I don't know how to join Trans Liberation Front. I don't know how to join, whatever big group. And like a big thing that I really advocate for is affinity groups or mutual aid networks. Essentially, like you and your mate are like, hey, I want to kind of feed people down the road. Like I know a load of like trans people that can't afford to eat at the minute. Cool, do something yourselves. I know that there is a company that's part of the supply chain for a local arms company. Cool, organize a blockade with your mates. Like it's that sort of thing. It's trying to make sure that everyone feels like they've got a place in the fight, and that they don't have to have particular connections in order to do it. We're told very often that we need to join like one massive organization, because like if we have that, then we can finally overthrow the government and stuff. But like that's a really long-term goal, and I guess like particularly as myself as an anarchist, I'm very interested in like the now, like what are we doing now? And if we hedge our bets too much on like the final mythological role, and life doesn't ever really work out the way that you planned, you can kind of end up ignoring the people that need our help now. A group that I always think of, and this is just the principle that I'm thinking of here rather than necessarily the action in and of itself, but we have a network of hunt saboteurs within the UK. And hunt sabs basically are people that they go out when a lot of fancy rich people in the UK do fox hunting, and they wear these like stupid outfits and they blow their horns and stuff. These groups go up and they just interrupt the hunt and make it so that they can't hunt the foxes, make sure that the like foxes are already kind of like maybe like scared away so that they don't get hunted, and they just like fuck shit up. And it's perfectly legal, it's a perfectly like legal thing to do. But I always think to myself that like if I was that fox in that situation, like that one action that would save my life, and that changes the entire trajectory of my life from there on out. And like that principle of like, if I can help one person's life is massive. My life has felt massive, and that change is a really big thing. So I always think, there's people always think that they've got nothing to offer, but everyone's got something to offer to the fight. Like if you're just like good at making social media graphics, good, make them, and you can kind of use that for promotion. If you're good at cooking, use that to like
you can bake
people.
bread.
Yeah, exactly. There's so much you can do to help people. Even if you're just like, I have a friend who is like a cis guy, and I can't remember what horrible law was being passed against trans people in the UK, but he's like a cis dude. He's just like a mate of mine, and he runs a film group, and he was like, oh, I wish I could help you guys. And I was like, just looked it up. I was like, there's a mutual aid group in your city. There's a trans mutual aid group in your city. Why don't you do the proceeds for the next one to be a fundraiser for them? So he did it, and it ended up raising like £1,000 for them, which goes that's like loads of people are going to be helped from that. It's massive.
Totally. And I just wanted to add like a little anecdote from my own life, just to show how small like things can become bigger. I live in a building that's run by like a international corporation slumlord, and the neighbors weren't communicating with each other, and they started raising the rents really high. And I literally a Post-it note in the laundry room that was like facebook.com/ the name of our building. And every year since then, we have come together to resist the rents, and we've all helped each other to keep our rents lower. And all it took was literally Sharpie on a Post-it note in the laundry room. And that was it, And now we have this little group chat where we help each other resist rent strikes, or resist rent hikes rather.
Yeah, I mean that's it, right? Like that's a very specific kind of it's a very practical thing to do, and it's that sort of thing is amazing. Yeah, exactly. Like I care about the practicalities of things, and like
I see that.
You know, I'd rather someone practically help people than bang on about Marx or whatever. Like it's I care about action.
Yes, I can see that in your work. And actually, that brings me to some of the amazing things that you've done. I wanted to talk about your directory of UK performers of color, which I had a little browse through. So comprehensive, so organized. Please tell me, I mean, I know what inspired it, but like, tell me the process of getting that together and how it's grown and how it started. I need to know everything.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'll have to talk a little bit about why I did it, which was that I wasn't getting booked for shows.
Great.
Every time I asked a promoter if I could get booked for a show, they would just say, "Oh, we don't book artists like you." And like, yeah, in some ways, like electronic music, it doesn't always fit on DIY scenes and stuff. But I'm not a DJ, and I'm like, I am like a performer and stuff. And there's like emo and punk elements in my music. I was going to shows and I was seeing like a dream pop band, a hardcore band, and like a metal band all on the same bill, 3 different genres, and yet I'm too outside of the box. Like, I mean, like in what world is dream pop and hardcore punk remotely similar? Why do they fit on the same bill, but electronic music and hip hop doesn't? And the answer for that is racism, basically, a lot of the time. Like people view, specifically this affects black people more than it affects me, really, but it obviously affects me as well.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people view these things as being from different worlds because like segregation meant that people were in different worlds, and therefore music develops in different worlds. And that's why you will not see like a soul band playing alongside an indie band, even if they're sonically kind of similar. And so then I was just like, well, I had my friend, I have a friend called Liv Winter, who's an absolutely amazing performer and kind of community activist and stuff, and they're based in London, and they came to play a show in Brighton, and this is a white, transmisogyny exempt person. They saw the lineup that they got booked for, and they said like, hey, I don't play all white lineups, book Floralis, she lives in Brighton.
Period.
And then after that I started getting booked for shows, and it was it was like mostly a punk bill. But after that I was like, okay, well, I got my foot in the door, how do I make sure that other artists of color get the foot in the door? So for ages I had one which was just a directory for Brighton, which is where I live, and then I was like, let's just make this UK wide and make it so that other people can kind of add themselves to it and stuff. And I've been trying to, the shows that I put on in Brighton are like always 50% people of color.
Nice.
And the reason it's not 100% actually is because a lot of audiences won't come down to it if it's 100% people of color. And so the idea actually is that because Brighton's very white and it's a very it's kind of a racist city, and so if you pull people in like with the white DIY bands, and then they see like, I don't know, like a soul band or a hip hop artist or whatever, or like like a kind of more desi thing or whatever, then they're more likely to kind of be more open to that in the future, and it normalizes the idea that we should be in DIY spaces. And so I'm trying to make it so that it becomes a norm where people are putting on at minimum one person of color per show, or one act of people of color per show.
Such a low bar.
It's an incredibly low bar, but it's also, I know that if I ask for any more than that, people just won't do it. So it's like, yeah.
I started creating a rule for myself. I have a degree in jazz, and I was a jazz musician for many years.
That's awesome.
I didn't mention that at the beginning of this, but I was a performer, and I started a rule for myself at some point where I wouldn't go see a show if there wasn't one woman somewhere in, like, not even on the bill, just one of the bands has one woman. And it was shocking how many times I was like, oh, this doesn't pass the Yoxon test.
Yeah, I mean, this is also the thing as well, like with jazz is so interesting for that, because there's like historically been so many like black women in jazz, and it's just become like a space of like, this is a space for white male intellectuals that study this at Oxford University. It's just nonsense. It's total nonsense. It's funny that you mentioned
one of
jazz.
the many reasons I don't do it anymore.
Yeah, it's funny they mentioned jazz. I've gotten really into Wayne Shorter recently. He's been kind of like
nice.
A bit of a inspiration for some of my like newer stuff that I've been writing as well. Like I find him really interesting.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I can't wait. I mean, I'm excited for your meteoric rise to success and fame and notoriety, and I'm going to be able to say, she was on my podcast first. Okay, and then we have so much more to talk about. This is going to be the longest interview ever, but I also want to talk about your organization, Kill Colonizers, which I struggled to find a little bit of information on this, but I understand it's like a music night, or is it more of an organization? Tell me a little bit about that.
It's a music night. It's a gig night, and it's like, you know, it's obviously it's got a provocative name, and also we tend to do a lot of the shows on the anniversary of famous colonizers' deaths. So like,
Nice.
Henry Kissinger and James Kirk and stuff. Like we've done a few of these. Again, yeah, like majority of the time, it's like it's majority people of color on the lineup. With like other DIY artists as well, who are like white DIY artists, but providing that they've got like good values, and it means that people kind of come in and then they can kind of like it normalizes seeing a lot of stuff. The first one we did was amazing because there was like a load of punks there who came down. It was a really beautiful mixture of like a lot of punks and a lot of like people of color that you typically just wouldn't see at a lot of DIY shows, all kind of interacting, all getting to know each other and stuff, and it kind of helps to fight that social isolation for a lot of them. But then there was, you know, it was amazing seeing in the audience, we seeing a load of punks and people of color watching this group called Smoke Poets, who are this Kashmiri hip hop group, and like they were laughing on stage saying like, oh, you guys like punk, don't you? Like this isn't your sort of thing. And all the punks started cheering and being like, no, we love you and stuff. And it's just started to really kind of normalize in Brighton seeing more mixed bills. And as such, now we're putting together a music festival as well on 3rd of July, which I'm really excited about. It's a like combined project between Transcend Borders and also Death Before Detransition. Yeah.
That's amazing. And so you said it was in collaboration with who?
The festival's called Black Cat Fest. It's on 3rd of July, and we've got some like really big artists as like Princess Shishi and Reptile B and Piglet and Kapil Seshasahi. Line up is either like trans people or people of color playing, but it's in collaboration with a group called Death Before Detransition, who do a lot of kind of like all trans lineups. It typically is a lot of like queercore and a lot of hardcore, but they're mixing their bills up a lot more as well. And then also a group called Transcend Borders, which I actually helped to set up. Like it was a group that I founded with a few other people, and they are an organization that send out £500 grants to trans refugees and asylum seekers. And so for this festival, we wanted to do like a regular festival, and then we're like, why don't we make it so that 25% of the profits from this go towards Transcend Borders? Because if it's going to be a big night, 25% is actually quite a lot of money to then kind of like send over to trans refugees and asylum seekers in the local area.
I think that a lot of listeners and watchers right now will think that this is like, wow, such a selfless act. But a lot of your shows are fundraisers for Palestine and for other things. Like you're constantly fundraising for mutual aid organizations and for these other organizations. How do you, this is just a practical question, but like, how do you get your own needs met while you're also doing this work for other people? Like, how do you find that balance?
I mean, to be honest, like I'll be completely honest about it. I think a lot of it is for me, and like it's, you know, it's for me and for others. Like this maybe comes down to a lot of my anarchist principles, but I see it as mutual. I never see it as charitable, because for me, like this is the community that I like being a part of, and I like the friends that I've made from it and stuff, and it feels nice and it feels good to do it. So I always feel quite happy about it. I also, in terms of like just financially being able to provide for myself and stuff, like the way that we typically raise money with Kill Colonizers is that like we have a raffle, and the raffle money goes towards the local organization, but then the money goes towards the artists. The ticket money goes towards the artists, and because I do think that artists do need to get paid, and that way you can do both.
Yes.
And that's kind of, and it's nice. And also I ensure that people are like able to sell their own merchandise at every show that I put on as well, because like artists need to be able to survive. So like, yeah, it's, you know, and that includes me as well. Like, you know, I sell my own merchandise at my shows as well. So for me, it's, I don't know, the community spirit of those events is so much nicer. People tend to feel happier, people feel mobilized, and that feels really good. And you compare that to like your average, like, I don't know, hipster music night. I feel out of place in them a lot of the time. I just don't feel, I mean, some of them I really like. There's been some really good ones, but like, I don't know. I think like people are drawn to my music because of the messaging a lot of the time, and because of the way it makes them feel politically and makes them feel kind of empowered against a kind of, you know, the ongoing rise of fascism in the UK. It makes you feel like you've got some strength in it. And so I think that when I put on shows and stuff that have that kind of focus of anti-fascism or anarchism or whatever you want to call it, people react better to it. So it's a nicer experience for me as well. you know.
It makes total sense, and that's what attracted me to your latest album. It just makes me feel like I'm part of something important, and I think people are going to find that when they listen to it.
Oh, thank you. That's nice to hear.
So I have a question about voice. We haven't talked about voice at all, even though this is the trans voice channel. But I tell people who are like looking into gender affirming voice, like for speaking, that training is optional.
Yeah.
Like, I would love to live in a world where nobody has to train their voice, but if they want to, they can, and it's easily accessible. And your voice is such a distinctive part of your music, obviously. So I wanted to know, what is your relationship with your voice as a trans woman, a trans misogyny affected person, and has intentional voice work of any kind been a part of your journey, whether that's like singing or gender affirming voice?
Yeah, it's interesting. I can do like a more girly voice. I haven't done it in a while, and you hear it at the beginning of Black Combat Boots, which is the opening track to the album. That's like, that's, some people thought it was pitch shifted. It's not. It's me just going like talking in a higher register. Yeah, I don't know. I think I just like the way I sing, and like also people seem to like my voice. I mean, I like the way my voice sounds. Like you say though, you know, it's optional. I think there's like a weird, I don't know if there's something you've noticed, there tends to be like a weird thing that people kind of say to trans women that voice train, where they kind of act as if like people are being sellouts for voice training, and it's like, oh, you hate yourself, you've internalized too much of the self-hate, blah blah blah, and it's sort of thing that is disproportionately applied towards trans women. And it's like, no, a lot of people are doing it for survival, or they feel dysphoric, and if they want to have their voice that way, then they should have their voice that way. Otherwise, you know, simultaneously, if you don't want to voice train, then you shouldn't have to. It's all about kind of the ability to choose whatever you want to do. Yeah, I don't know, I like, there have been times I've been made to feel self-conscious about my voice, and that's, I think when I've had people comment on it, it's hurt, because it's like, oh, I thought my voice was nice, and if you don't, then being told that it's unfeminine, that's when it kind of starts to really like not feel very nice for me, and then that's when I start to doubt it. But like I you know, without that pressure, I really like having a deep voice and stuff. Own
it. I love that. It's really funny because the people who are talking about like, oh, that voice is not feminine enough or whatever, are the people who don't look closely at voices or femininity for that matter. Like, now that I've been in this field for a long time, I have listened to many voices, cis, trans, and everything in between, and all people of all genders and all hormone configurations have all different types of voices. It's like, if you look at it closely for any amount of time, it becomes very complicated very fast. So voice training should be a personal decision that is about your happiness or your safety or whatever you need. And it can be part-time or full-time or just a tool, you know, like, I'm really glad that you're just out here saying, I love my voice, because I think a lot of trans women don't feel like they have permission to simply love their voice the way it is. And I'd like to hear it. That's
yeah, all. I played a show in London the other day, and it was one of the nicest things I've ever heard after a show. And there was this young brown trans femme, must have been like early 20s or something. She came over to me and she said, she was like crying because she really connected with You're Not Dead, which is, I think, like that's like a real sort of like love letter to trans women, that song. And she was like, it felt really good to see not only another brown trans woman on stage, but to see a brown trans woman with a deep voice on stage. And that felt really nice. Like, could have been taken the wrong way, but like, thankfully I didn't take it the wrong way, so it went okay. But like for her, I think it meant something to kind of like feel that she didn't have to do that. And hopefully there are other people that kind of feel that way when they listen to like my music or music of similar artists or whatever.
Absolutely. And all parts of transition are optional, just for people listening. Like, you get to decide what parts of transition matter to you, just in case someone needs to hear it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the name of this interview series is Speaking Freely, and I like to leave room for my guests to speak freely about a topic that matters to them. And I know that you have prepared a little something for me, so I would love if you could share that, please.
Yeah, I would like to talk about the needs of trans refugees in this country, in the UK. When I say this country, if you couldn't tell by my accent, you know, we're probably aware of a lot of kind of many horrors that are happening to many different people across the world, and I would like to add another horror, but also kind of tell people that there are things that they can do. There's things that they can do to help people. So the UK has what we might call a hostile environment for trans refugees and asylum seekers. And for those of us that aren't from the UK, you might not know that we have a policy in the UK that's called the Hostile Environment Policy. It started in 2012. It started by the Home Secretary at the time, Theresa May, who eventually became Prime Minister. And what it means is they want to make it like kind of impossible to be a refugee or asylum seeker or an undocumented migrant in this country. So they freeze people's bank accounts. There were like laws that came in that meant that landlords are required to check immigration statuses for people before people rent. The access to our health service, the NHS, is restricted, and the NHS then gives data to the Home Office, which then can be used for forced removals or deportations. Plus, undocumented people in the UK have to pay ridiculous fees to access for healthcare. Like in 2021, there was a 29-year-old asylum seeker in the UK who was given a £100,000 hospital bill after suffering a stroke, which left him in a coma and left him paralysed. He then had to stop taking anti-stroke medication because he was being charged £6,000 for the treatment. Bearing in mind, as British citizens, like our healthcare is meant to be free. So yeah, it's completely impossible for like it's made it incredibly difficult for refugees and asylum seekers to live normal lives in this country. And in the present day, our current government, which is the Labour government, have enacted the most amount of forced removals or deportations in over 10 years. In 2025, 60,000 people were deported. Now, we as like trans people are very aware of like the things that are happening towards trans people on Turf Island or the United Kingdom, whatever you want to call it. But there is an intersection between what happens for trans people and what happens to asylum seekers in the UK. Because there's no policy in place to help trans refugees or asylum seekers access hormones, in the UK, a lot of people that were previously on hormones when they come here are forced to detransition. The Home Office then typically misgenders people all the time, and they put asylum seekers in really unsafe accommodation. So a lot of them are being put in these hotels which are mouldy and are falling apart, and people are given £9 a week to survive on. Like it's horrifying. They can't really leave. Like a lot of them can't even take the train to like, you know, maybe even like look for a job to get more money. They are just trapped until eventually the UK decides what they want to do with them. The hotels themselves now, even though they are horrible, are currently in the process of being closed down in exchange for army barracks as a form of accommodation, so that people don't have like any privacy. If you are a trans person in the situation and you are like also like not only like detransitioning at this point as well, being in a room filled with just like loads and loads of people that might potentially hate you for being trans is super dangerous. So and I meet a lot of trans refugees and asylum seekers kind of in my day-to-day, just because I think being part of the trans community, you meet them. For a lot of trans people, the way that we access gender-affirming care is by doing GoFundMes, and is by making friends with people in the community. But if there is a language barrier there, or there's just, you know, the unconscious racism that might exist amongst like white queers or whatever, they don't have that community, so therefore they don't have people paying for their fundraisers. And so there's the privileges that they have are very few. There's very few kind of like access to gender-affirming care that they can get. And also they're like escaping their own communities. Many of them, you know, are seeking asylum in the UK because they're escaping transphobia in their home countries, and the UK is already a place which doesn't really provide many legal protections for trans people anyway. So because of all of this is the reason that I set up, I mentioned earlier, Transcend Borders with a few people to hand out £500 grants to people. There's a lot of like gigs that were previously being put on. Transcend Borders kind of went for, I ended up having to step away for a little while because I got too busy with other stuff in my life. But I'm rejoining now, and we're helping to set it back up again. But we were doing gigs with entirely like kind of cutie pock lineups and stuff, and inviting refugees and asylum seekers down to these gigs as well, and kind of providing them like free entry. I guess something that I want to speak a bit freely about is like, firstly, I mean, you can still donate to Transcend Borders to kind of send money to trans refugees and asylum seekers. But I think people more generally need to be thinking about, within the trans community, they need to think about the isolation that a lot of trans people of color generally, but also trans migrants, refugees, asylum seekers face. My new album is actually entirely about the kind of isolation of being a brown trans woman from my own lived experience. But it was hard enough for me, as someone that is, you know, a British citizen, someone that's born in the UK, grew up here, to find community, because of the fact that I don't really fit into a lot of spaces here. But for a trans refugee or asylum seeker where there is that kind of like either language barrier or just like the accent throws people off, or people just don't really know how to talk to refugees and asylum seekers, it's just so incredibly lonely. And so I think that people need to really like think about really trying to include trans people of color. Because like a lot of the time people talk about like, oh, the trans community is so welcoming, you know, I've never had a problem within the trans community and stuff. It's like, cool, try being a person of color. It's a lot harder. And, you know, I don't think the trans community is more racist than other communities are, but it's just like when these people are meant to feel like your siblings, they're meant to feel like family, and they just aren't. It hurts so much. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for speaking freely on this subject. It really matters a lot, and all the work you do is so important, and I'm really glad that I was able to give you a little space to chat about it today.
Thank you so much, Renee.
If people want to find your work, your music, I'm going to leave links below, but maybe you could tell people where is the best place to find you. Yeah,
so my music's not on Spotify, but you can find it on Bandcamp or any other streaming service. Floralis, that's my name. You can probably see it on the title. You can find me on Instagram at Floralis_LC. And also you can find out about Black Cat Fest by typing in Black Cat Fest into Instagram. Yeah, I think that's it. I plugged basically everything there. Keep an eye out for some new music from me, hopefully this year. Very excited about it, very excited about the new album, very different sound. It's going to be very good.
And I can't wait for your North American tour, whenever that happens to be, when you come to Montreal. Please.
Yeah, I would love that. I would love that.
Well, if I can ever help or connect you with people, I would love to. Please.
Thank you. Yeah, maybe I'll take you up on that.
Okay, well, thanks so much, and I look forward to our paths crossing again.
Cheers. Thank you so much, Renee.
Thank you so much to Floralis for sharing her story, her music, and her activism with us. You can find links to her music on Bandcamp, her Instagram at floralis.lc, and everything about Black Cat Fest in the description below. Seriously, go listen to Saboteur Club Anthems Volume 1. She told me the song I Might Tell Your Mates was almost an afterthought, and I consider it an absolute banger. I bought it on Bandcamp, why haven't you? I know this interview was a little different from our usual content here on the Trans Voice channel, but one of the things I love most about this work is that using your voice is never just about the acoustics of it. It's about what you say and who you say it for and what you're willing to put on the line to say it. Floralis does all of that. I hope this conversation leaves you feeling a little more seen, a little more fired up, and a little more connected to the people around you who are fighting for the same things.
Remember, I'm pulling for you. We're all in this together.
If you want more interviews just like this one, check out the Speaking Freely playlist linked below. If you like this episode, I highly recommend checking out my conversation with Bernie Wagenblast, a trans woman and activist who is one of the voices of the New York City metro system. And let me know in the comments, who would you like to see next on Speaking Freely? Sometimes y'all suggest people that I don't think I could ever get on here, but please continue to suggest them. Anyway, that's all for today. I've been Renee, and I hope this helps.